Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm sharing with you my top 10 farmhouse DIYs that I've done on my channel. These are the ones that have the most views, the ones you guys really seem to like, so I put them all together and I think you're really gonna enjoy this video. So the first project is a home sign. This was actually a Dollar Tree DIY. So the first thing you're gonna need is 4 signs for this project. You're also going to need a wreath, and then I also used some lamb's ear that you can pick up at Walmart, and I know that they have this again this season. I saw it there. First thing I did was just cut off the strings at the top. Next, I'm going to be using some scrapbooking paper that I picked up at Hobby Lobby, and I'm just going to trace around my signs and cut them out. So I'm going to do this for all 4 of the signs. Next, I'm going to use matte Mod Podge, and I'm just going to put a little bit on my sign, and then I'll just put the paper on top of it. Now, a trick I like to do, and it looks like I didn't do it here, was I like to wait for it to completely dry before I put the top layer on. That helps with preventing any bubbling. So make sure you let your under layer dry before you do the top layer. Next, I'm going to be using these Waverly stencil letters and some white Waverly chalk paint. I've actually used these letters quite a bit and really think, that they're nice. You're just going to do 2 coats, and I'm spelling out the H, the M, and the E in the middle of the signs. Now I'm using a detail brush here and just filling in those lines. This is a personal preference for me. You may like the way that looks. I like them more filled in. To connect all my signs together, I'm going to be hot gluing the edges together. To really reinforce it, I'm going to be using a little bit of E6000 along the edges. I'll also add some E6000 to some popsicle sticks, and this, once it dries, will just make it nice and held in place. Now you may be curious what we're going to do with the O. So I'm going to take that same wreath form and some small pieces of the lamb's ear and just tuck them into my wreath form, hot gluing them down a little bit. You don't have to hot glue every single one. And then to attach it to the middle, I'm just going to use a little hot glue and put it on my sign. And this is still hanging up in my piano room, and I just love the way it looks. So next, I'm going to show you how you can transform a dollar cabinet door that you have on hand. You can pick it up at the restore. So the first thing I'm going to do is just use a little bit of wood fill, and I'm filling in the holes where you would put the handle. Once that has a chance to dry, just come back in and sand off any excess so it's ready for painting. Next, I'm going to be using this moss color by Waverly. I really enjoyed this color this year. I think it's popular and fresh for the year. And I'm just going to use my paintbrush and make sure I get the edges, and then I'm also going to come back in and paint the whole entire front side with 2 coats. Next, I'm going to wet distress, and this paint wanted to come off, and sometimes that's fun. It just depends on the look you're going for, but I went with it. I just kind of pulled off as much paint as I wanted to, and then let that dry for a minute. Next, I'm using this Home Sweet Home sticker that you can pick up at Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to put it in the middle of my frame. Now I wanted this to be functional, so I picked up some of these Amazon hooks, and I will link them in the description box if you're interested in them. And I just simply attached these to the bottom, and it made it a really functional hanging system that you can use in your mudroom or by your front door. And I find that Amazon is the cheapest place for these hooks. You could also use something like this from Dollar Tree if you didn't want to purchase the Amazon hooks. On the back, I just put a regular picture hanger in order to hang it up. And here's a look at how this turned out. I think it's such a fun farmhouse, easy, inexpensive hanging system. My most popular video this year had to have been this clock. You guys loved it. Grabbed it at the thrift store for $5. I'm just going to tape around the clock face so I don't mess with that. Next, I'm using my favorite color, which is Duck Egg by Annie Sloan. It's kind of just that perfect blue color. And I'm gonna do 2 coats on the whole entire piece. Next, I'm going to let that dry and then I'll remove the tape. Once it has a chance to dry for about an hour or 2, I like to come back in and distress. I'm wet distressing this piece, so I just get a damp rag and I'm gonna be pulling off paint on the corners and just around the edges. And this is personal preference. You know, if you don't like a lot of distressing, just do it a little bit or not at all. You don't have to do a lot of distressing. That's the fun part about it. It's just whatever your personal preference is. And I still have this sitting in my bedroom and love it. So our next project was actually in that same video. So I picked up for $1.50 this little like letter container, and I thought it would be perfect for spring, maybe with some flowers in it. So I'm going to paint it with that same color of Duck Egg blue. Once that has a chance to dry, I'm going to wet distress this piece as well. Every piece is different. You know, sometimes you really have to pull the paint off, and this was one that I did. You know, sometimes things just don't really want to wet distress very well. I got this basket at Dollar Tree and I really wanted to use the wiring in it to put in my piece. So the first thing I did was just cut out a long straight portion from the basket. And these baskets are pretty flimsy, so with a nice pair of kitchen scissors, you're able to cut it out just fine. Next, I kind of eyeballed my measurements and cut it down because I basically wanted to slide it in from the top. And so I'm just kind of looking at it, cutting it down until it fits in place. And then to attach it, I just added a little bit of hot glue to the back. Now you could put any kind of flowers in here. I picked up these tulips at Walmart. They were $3. Thought that was a great deal. And I just slid them off of the grouping that they were in and put them into my container that I made. And I know it's a little different and unexpected, and that's why I think I like this. I think it's just a fun little spring accent. So next, I found this crate at a flea market and I loved its construction. Thought it was a really great deal. I probably picked it up between like $10 and $15. I wanted it to look aged. So what I did was just got some of my acrylic paints. I have a black, a gray, and a brown, and I'm gonna use those to put those as my base underneath colors. So I'm just taking a dry brush and I'm just simply going to be adding in paint around the edges where I know I will be distressing off, and you'll be able to see those paint colors coming through. Next, I'm going to use some of this petroleum jelly. And this you can use when you paint on top of it. The paint won't stick to it. So it makes it very easy for you to wet distress after you're done painting. So I'm taking this and just adding it to the edges of my piece. So this is going to make it really chippy after I paint on it. Next, I'll just use the white paint by Waverly, and I'm just going to be doing a coat of paint over the top of this. I want this to be farmhouse. I want it to be very distressed looking, so I'm trying to make it look as worn as possible, being a brand new piece like it is. Okay, so next I'm going to come in and start pulling off that paint. I'm going to be concentrating in those areas where I put that petroleum jelly down, because that should really smear that paint and take it off in those areas. I love painting and adding and taking away paint until I get my desired look. I just think it's so much fun. So just keep working with a piece if you're not happy with it until you get the look that you're going for. And to finish mine off, I added in some of these faux plants from IKEA that I love, and I think just sitting out on my dining room table, I just think it looks great. So this next project is actually a recent project. So you're going to need 4 of these shelves that you can pick up at Dollar Tree. You're also going to need a Dollar Tree trash can. I'm cutting off the top and the bottom portion of the trash can, so I have one long piece to use. Next, I'm going to take that little cardboard that was in those hexagon shelves, and I'm going to use that as my template, just so I can cut around the wire. Next, I'm going to use those lines and just cut out each of the hexagon. And I'm going to do that for all 4 of them so that I have a backing. Now I'm going to check it, make sure I don't have any extra hanging on the edge. If I do, I'll just trim that down. And you should be able to cut this with a normal pair of scissors. From there, I'm just going to add in some hot glue to the back. Then I will hold down the wire to the back where I hot glued. You can also add in additional hot glue over the top to really hold it in place. So I'll repeat that for all of my 4 shelves. Next, I decided a configuration that I wanted them to be in on the wall, and I'm just going to simply hot glue them together. You could add anything in these shelves. What I decided to use was some boxwood garland that I had picked up at Hobby Lobby. I also decided on a couple of these Dollar Tree succulents. And all I'm going to do is simply hot glue it to the bottom. I think this piece would be really nice in a bathroom or anywhere on your wall. The next project is so simple, but just so fun. So I picked up this $1 rug from Dollar Tree. Love the design on it, and I love that it has fringe on the edge as well. So I'm going to make like a lumbar support type pillow that you can put like in a chair. And I'm just going to fold it over so that the wrong sides are together. And then to hold it in place, I'm not even gonna sew it. I'm literally going to use hot glue to hold this in place. And I'll do that for 2 of the sides. Now with the open side, that is the side I'm going to use to actually stuff the pillow once the hot glue has dried. I use this extra snow that I picked up at Joann's when it was on clearance, but you can use anything. If you have stuffing from another pillow, just use what you have on hand. And you want to fill it up enough so you don't have any weird lumps, and make sure you kind of flatten it out so it all looks nice. Next, I'm using this fabric stick glue by Surebonder, and I'm just going to hold it in place to close it up. And for $1, I have an adorable pillow. Okay, so this next project, I picked this table up at a garage sale for I think $15. It was really natural wood like this. I love the way it looked. I just wanted to tweak it a little bit to make it fit in more with my decor. I didn't really like the top of it. I decided I was going to add in some additional paint to this, so I'm just using some moss green by Waverly, and I'm just lightly dabbing this paint on the top of this table. Next, I'm going to be using a wet rag and pulling off a majority of the paint. I want this to be a subtle wash. I don't want it to have a ton of paint on it. So I'll continue on the front of my table doing that same step. I really wanted to show a lot of the natural wood because I thought it was a cool character of this piece. So that was my point in not painting it completely. I really wanted you to be able to see the natural wood coming through. So I'm going to repeat this same step with the silver lining paint. And the fun about painting is just using whatever colors work for you. So I'm adding in some brown to my moss, and it's just going to give me a deeper green look. And everything that I do on this table, I'm just going to blend it in so it just fits in seamlessly. I love how it fits more in with my decor. Next up is a planter I did not very long ago, and this planter I grabbed for 75 cents at the thrift store. The first thing I'm going to do is just paint it with 2 coats of ink by Waverly. I grabbed some scrapbook paper at Hobby Lobby that I'm going to use for this project. So I'm just going to hold the paper up, and it's just going to go in this insert portion. So I'm just going to measure it off, fold my paper over so it's a nice clean line, and then I will cut the paper out. I'll repeat this step because I need enough paper to have another strip. Next, I'm going to use my matte Mod Podge and just put that all over the center, and then I'm going to crease the paper and then just use the Mod Podge to hold it in place. Now I decided it looked better by not putting the Mod Podge over the top, so I just let it completely dry, added in some plants, and I think it looks adorable sitting out. The next project are bar stools that I made for my kitchen. So at the Restore, you can usually pick up bar stools for around $5. So I got a set of 3, and I'm simply painting them with 2 coats of Waverly white chalk paint. If you've ever painted bar stools or chairs, they do take a while to get all the spindles painted, but in the end, I really think it's worth it. So I did the 2 coats with the Waverly white chalk paint. Next, I just really wanted these to be distressed, so I went after them. I just pulled off all the paint, really went around the edges, and if you don't have an electric sander, you could hand sand it, but it is a lot easier, and I use my electric sander all the time. If you're doing a set of chairs or bar stools, just make sure you put them next to each other so that you make them look sort of similar and you don't have too much paint pulled off and the other one doesn't have as much. Next, I'm going to use a little bit of dark wax by Annie Sloan, and I'm going to use that around the edges. This is just really going to help to deepen up my look, make that wood that's underneath there be a little bit darker. Next, I'm going to use this cute stencil that I got from Stencil Revolution, and I'm just going to put one of the farm animals on each of my stools. So I'll just place it in the center. I didn't measure it, I just kind of put it down, taped it in place, and then I'm going to be using that moss green color. I must have really loved this moss green color this year. I'm just going to use 2 coats to stencil it onto my stools. Now these stools are still in my kitchen and I haven't had any trouble with any paint coming off of them, and they've held up really well. I didn't want these to be perfect either. I just used some hand sandpaper and pulled off just a little bit on here, not too much. And since these are everyday use type items, you definitely want to add a clear wax. I'm just using some Annie Sloan clear wax and I'm wiping it on my stools and pulling it off. Here's a look at these stools that were $5 stools. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing all these farmhouse DIYs. If you're still watching, thank you so much. Make sure you're following me on Instagram and Facebook. And if you're new here, make sure you're subscribed, and I'll link our last DIY so you can watch that one next. And I'll talk to you guys in our next one. Bye.